Today on Rambling About Cars, we are electrified with news this close to the holidays. Toyota debuted everything at once. Ken Block has a new electrified Gymkhana car. There's a new Shelby to talk about that's not electric. Patriarchs of Power, it's podcast time. We just got to jump into it. There's a lot to do here. I'm Christopher Smith, and you know Mr. Chris Bruce across the way.
I'm here, yeah, and we are going to kick things off with, so on Monday, Toyota decided we are going to tell the world about our electrification plan, and we're just not going to talk about it. We are going to show it. Toyota revealed 15 electric vehicle concepts, plus I don't believe that counts the Lexus that's actually coming. So you could call it 16 pretty easily. So I guess let's go ahead and kind of dig right in.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where we need to start. And we knew that Toyota was going to be doing a presentation.
But the way they presented it was going to be like battery stuff. So none of us are like, it is what it is.
And
but
so
then,
I mean, this kind of caught us a little off guard. And I mean, our European crew with Adrian and Angel, I mean, they killed it. And then, I mean, because I come on a little bit later in the day, so I was just kind of learning more about this today. It's just been such a busy week, and there was so much information that came out from this, right?
Yeah, just a ton of stuff. The headline figure is 15 concepts plus the Lexus that we actually know is coming. And they also kind of laid out their super ambitious EV plan. So I'm going to hit that first, and then we'll kind of go through some of the vehicles because there's some cool stuff in there.
There is.
But the headline thing is that they want to have 30 EVs on the market by 2030. They want to be selling 3.5 million EVs a year also by 2030. And then the one that I wonder if they can do it, but they say that this is the plan by 2035. They want zero emissions vehicles in 100% of their lineup for all of their global sales. So not a single combustion powered vehicle among Toyota's vehicles by 2035, which that seems like a lot, but
it does. And just a quick reminder for everybody, we're looking at a slideshow now of all of the various vehicles that were shown. So you want to go follow us at Motor One Podcast on YouTube. Go there, like and subscribe, smash every button you can so you can see what we're talking about. You know, Bruce, if you had said 10 years ago, if you'd laid out, or if Toyota had laid out this plan 10 years ago, or maybe even especially 15 years ago, I'd say, yeah, I could see that happening. Because Toyota, I mean, with the Prius, like it or not, they were really leading the electric charge with their hybrid vehicles, and it seemed like they were trying to catch up. And then Toyota just kind of, it seems like they just stopped. It's like they got to a certain point. They didn't stop, but it's like they got to a certain point and they were like, yeah, I don't think we need to really do anything more. We'll just put more hybrid powertrains in other vehicles and we'll just leave it at that.
Right, and they definitely proliferated hybrids because, I mean,
you
started with the Prius, but then there's been there have been hybrid Camry, hybrid RAV4, plug-in hybrid RAV4. Like, they've definitely plug-in hybrid Prius. Like, they've done the hybrid and plug-in hybrid thing, but for whatever reason, they have been very, very, very slow to go EV.
And yeah, when they lay out this plan out, like I said, if they'd have laid out this plan 15 years ago, I would say, yeah, I see Toyota easily going in that direction. And now they've just kind of been stagnant on hybrid. They haven't been going further. And then they just dropped 15 cars all at once. It feels, I'm skeptical. I mean, I'll just say it right out. I'm very skeptical that they'll meet that goal.
What it reminds me of, and they're very different companies. Obviously, depending on the year, Toyota is either the largest automaker in the world or the second largest, or sometimes the third largest. Them, GM, and Volkswagen all kind of go against each other depending on the year. But to me, do you remember, I want to say it was 2010 or 2011 when Lotus showed up and showed like 7 concepts and said, this is our next Elise, this is our next Esprit, this is the next, whatever. And none of those vehicles ever happened. I'm not saying none of these vehicles are ever going to happen, but some of them, it feels like were essentially rendered out for headlines rather than them actually planning to build them.
That's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up, because the way this presentation went down, I mean, they weren't talking about each individual car in detail.
No,
it was just kind of like
they picked and chose a few of them. They talked about some of the Lexuses. They talked about a couple of Toyotas, but no, they did not detail every vehicle.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about some of those here in a bit. But the takeaway I got from this is that look at our big fancy backdrop of all of these electric cars. We are going to be an electric player, but don't look too close, because
or don't ask too many questions.
Don't ask too many questions, because we kind of don't have any answers. And to support that, of all of those vehicles, I think only like one or maybe two, correct me if I'm wrong, only one or two had visible windows where you could see inside. The rest, everything was just completely blacked out, which tells me, okay,
just one. I think it was just the BZ. What is it? Sorry, the BZ4X was
the
there.
The BZ4X Stormtrooper THX 113,
which we've already seen the interior of, so it's not a huge surprise,
well, that's a production vehicle. All the rest of these, I mean, everything's completely blacked out where you can't even sort of get a glimpse inside of a headrest,
right?
Which tells me, okay, these are probably just basic mock-ups. I mean, I have no grounds to base that on other than Toyota isn't letting us see anything remotely related to an interior. It's just the impression I have is, hey, here's our big pony show. Believe us, because we have all of these cars that we're showing you right now, even though there's no information about most of them. But to Toyota's credit, there are some really cool looking concepts in there.
There are some really cool. So I had this paused for a few minutes on their sports car concept, which I will put up the story. We kind of cherry picked a few of the most interesting ones. We have a story about everything in general, and then we have kind of the more interesting
like
ones.
3 or 4, don't we? Yeah.
Yep. So one of them is what we're looking at now, and that's the sports car concept. And so Adrian, our boss, wrote this. Here, let me share it. But his headline was essentially the much long rumored Toyota MR2 revival. Are we finally seeing it here? And he might have a little bit of a point. There is a certain MR2-ishness from this vehicle.
There is. And it's ironic because I had written an article, I think just a day or two prior to this, that came up from Best Car, which is a Japanese website that has a rather notorious history. I mean, they're what, like maybe
dubious history of reliability.
Dubious history of saying, hey, we've got a scoop on this. And it's like, you know what, like maybe 80-20, they're kind of close, and then they're not really. But the report from them was, okay, Toyota is working with Isuzu and Daihatsu,
right? Which are both brands that they own or have a stake in, at least,
on a new MR2 or an MR2 successor. Point being a small mid-engine sports car. So to see this pop up then just a couple days later, and I mean, we're looking at it now. If you're not with us on YouTube, like I said, go to YouTube, subscribe, podcast, Motor One Podcast. You want to do that so you can see these things. I mean, looking at it, it's just kind of a small angular. I mean, it looks like a little mid-engine 2-seat sports car, but
it's cool.
If it's electric, we know it's not going to be mid-engine because it's going to have just motors at the either a motor at their back for rear-wheel drive, maybe dual motors for all-wheel drive. But the layout certainly looks very mid-engine with that really short drop off in the front, with kind of a just big haunches at the back. A rather tall greenhouse, I think, for such a small car. I mean, it's edgy. It looks neat. It's all blacked out. We can't see inside. It's one of the cars that you can't really, see anything else. But MR2, I mean, a little. I gotta say, Toyota's taking some steps in the performance direction again. Albeit, I mean,
we have to take this with a grain of salt, because amongst all of these vehicles, except for one that we'll get to here in a minute, they gave us no platform information.
Right.
They gave us no powertrain information. These are purely just concepts without us really knowing what's underneath them, what's powering them, how they're going to build them.
And most don't even have names. I mean, they just presented these cars,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Which, I mean, that's another thing that made this whole presentation just kind of strange. Usually when you have vehicles on display that you're showing people, there's at least some sort of name for them. Which kind of goes, which, I mean, usually, right?
Yeah.
Check out our 15 vehicles. I mean, I guess if you're going to debut 15 vehicles at once, you may not have time to name them. It all goes back to my theory of they're really putting on a big show to try to demonstrate, hey, we're serious about electrification. We're going to be an electric leader. Here are 15 vehicles that back that up. But I mean, we know that it's also just kind of a show, right?
Yeah. This is one that you have to just take with a grain of salt. Like, it looks super impressive when you first look at it, when you first see, oh my God, Toyota has 15 electric vehicle concepts, and there's sports cars, and there's cool off-roaders, and there's a pickup truck, and there's all sorts of
Convertibles.
stuff. Yeah, but when you start digging into the details, you realize, wait a second, you're showing us stuff, but you're not telling us anything.
Yeah, but isn't that kind of a trend with automakers now?
Well, yeah, I mean, but maybe we'll get it for one vehicle, but we don't usually get it for 15 vehicles.
Yeah, it's like, check out our new car. Here's the name. Well, okay, how much power does it have? Well, we'll reveal the power later. Okay, well, what's the interior like? We'll reveal the interior later. Okay, yeah. How much does it cost? We'll reveal that later. They like to be they've gotten to where they're a little cagey on information, and I think it's this idea of let's stretch things out. We'll see if we can keep the buzz going a little bit longer, while at the same time hiding the fact that there probably isn't much buzz to begin with.
Well, here's the cool one, though, or one of the cool ones. There are several cool ones. And this one, actually, you can see on the bumper has a name, the Compact Cruiser EV. So
yeah, let's spend a few minutes talking about this one.
Maybe Toyota's more serious about this one since it has an actual name. That's pure speculation on my part. But like you said, a lot of them don't. This just looks fun and cool. It's just, it's clearly FJ40, FJ Cruiser inspired, off-roader. Obviously, EVs in the name, so that hood scoop is unnecessary as hell, but it looks good. I'm glad they put it there, but it's not doing anything.
Maybe that's designed to keep the cooler full of shrimp that's up there nice and cold. They're ripping ideas from Ford on that.
But, so yeah, they showed this little kind of off-roader concept. Our pals over at Inside EVs, they, like us, we work together, but we don't write the same stories. So when we were cherry picking stuff, we didn't pick this one out. They did. So you can see a story about it there. Again, it's mostly speculation because, as you can see, the windows are completely blacked out.
Right.
There were no details in the press release about it. We know nothing about a platform. We know nothing about powertrain. We know nothing about batteries. All we know is there's this cool looking concept. And it's cool looking. That's kind of the list.
It's a cool concept that looks, as we're sitting here talking about this, it's got my mind thinking. Okay. I've been trashing on Toyota here a little bit for making this presentation and having all of these vehicles and not saying anything about them and making it be just more like a pony show. But at the same token, we're sitting here talking about it. Would we be talking about these things if we didn't have? So if we actually had more information to talk about, because I mean, there's some mystery here now. Okay, we're looking at this blue little FJ inspired Toyota concept that's called the Compact Cruiser EV, and that's all we know. But it looks fantastic. I think I mean, could you see that has a nice Wrangler or a Bronco rival?
Yeah. Wrangler.
I absolutely could. Absolutely could. And having it be electrified, if that's something that were to come out, say, in the next 2 or 3 years, I don't see a fully electric Bronco in the next 2 or 3 years.
I think my thing with this is that I can't remember the last time a company revealed, a legitimate company, a major company, revealed 15 concepts at once.
Right.
Can you think, when was the last time you saw that much volume of here's new stuff at one time? And I think that's what makes it worth talking about, because this is, you know, it's been years since we've seen something like this. And the fact that they put all of this stuff with no fanfare, we had no teasers beforehand. Think about if this was, maybe I'm picking on a company. Think about this as GM and how many teasers for like the Hummer, or how many teasers for the Mach-E or stuff like that we've seen. Even Toyota, we've bagged on Toyota before for putting out way too many teasers for stuff like the Supra, or even the first gen Toyota 86. This, we thought it was going to be a presentation about Toyota batteries, and it turns out, oh no, we have 15 concepts. Here's every single one of them. We're not going to tell you anything about them, but we got them.
It's an interesting take. And as we're talking about it, I'm glad we're talking about it, and I'm glad we're doing it live on the podcast, because you're seeing evolution in action. I went into this thinking, that's just like a cheap move on Toyota's part. They want to show that they're dominant in an area that they're not dominant in.
I think that's part of it, honestly.
I mean, that could be part of it, but bringing out all of these vehicles, I mean, there's no way you're going to spend time on each one talking about each one. So they're just leaving the mystery to the car people. They're leaving the mystery to us and to the listeners out there as to what the heck is going on. What is this blue FJ looking thing that has a name on it, but nothing else? I mean, is this just a weird concept? Is this something that's going to go into production? Is this a near production concept? Is this just a fun idea? We don't know. We don't know that about any of these things.
Except for one. We'll get to. There's one.
Except one that we're going to get to. And I'm happy to get to it once we get there. Before we get there, though, there was a vehicle sitting next to that compact cruiser EV. Yeah, let's jump over to the pickup, because this also looks, I mean, that doesn't look like a concept to me.
No. So this one, I think, is something a bit different. I wrote up the story. This is one of the ones we picked out. Let me share this screen now. Hold on.
I mean, it's just called, well, we don't know what it's called. It's just, it's just a compact, like a concept pickup truck.
Right. But here's the interesting thing. You look at this, and from the images we have, you can kind of look at it and get an idea of the size. I think it's fair to say this is a Tacoma size truck.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm talking out of school there. That's clearly what it is. And we know a new generation of the Tacoma is coming. We have spy shots of it, in fact.
Well, and you compared it in your article with the current Tacoma,
right?
And I mean, the similarities are shocking.
Certainly there.
I don't need the pun, but there are differences, but it's easily recognizable, I think, as a Tacoma.
Yeah, and the other thing I wrote in the story about this is that the rumor we've been hearing for a while is that the new Tacoma will switch to the Toyota F platform. And that's the same platform that's under the new Tundra, the new Land Cruiser, and the new Lexus LX. And that is a platform built for electrification in mind. And we know that because the Land Cruiser in some markets and the LX are going to have hybrid versions. I haven't heard of a full EV vehicle on that platform, but it doesn't. I wouldn't think it's impossible. I don't know, but it seems logical. So, and in fact, I got to call out a commenter who said something that I didn't put in the story because it would be speculation, but it was something I was certainly thinking of. And that is, so this is back 161. I think we just got a taste of the next gen Tacoma, save for the solid grille. It'll look like this.
Yeah.
I think he might be right. I think this might be Toyota's sneaky way of showing us the next gen Tacoma without actually showing it, because we know it's under development. We've seen spy shots of it under development, and it all kind of fits together. And now, it might, obviously, like he said, they'll open up the grill because they'll have to feed the combustion engine, but maybe there's going to be a Tacoma EV, and that would make sense if you look at the market. We haven't seen a compact electric truck, but we certainly know the F-150 is going electric. The Silverado and Sierra are going electric.
Yep.
Like, that's the way the market's moving. Maybe Toyota was actually kind of clever this time, and they're going to have the first compact EV truck. And that would be interesting.
Well, again, let's jump back 10 or 15 years. If someone came up to you and said, okay, in the mid 2020s, who's going to have an electric pickup truck? Is it going to be Ford? Is it going to be General Motors? Or is it going to be Toyota?
Oh, yeah. I would put all my chips in a Toyota.
Who in the hell would have said GM or Ford?
Right.
None. Everybody would have picked Toyota. So, again, it's interesting to see how Toyota just kind of got to a certain point and then they stopped. And now with this presentation, it feels like they realized, oh crap, okay. Ford actually has an electric pickup truck out before we do. We should probably do something about that. So here's 15 concepts, all electric.
And I'm just thinking about this as you say it. Toyota didn't even try to hybridize the Tacoma or the Tundra.
Yeah.
They clearly had the tech. They had the Prius. They had the RAV4. They had they had these models. They could have done it. They never even tried. So Ford beat them to the punch with a hybrid pickup truck, let alone a full battery electric pickup. So
I suspect Toyota executives were just watching people buying F-150s and Silverados and Rams hand over fist, still getting like 18, 20 miles to the gallon and thinking, why the hell do we need to work on hybrid versions of our trucks? Clearly, the truck buyers aren't interested in that. So in the meantime, Ford and GM have kind of snuck in, at least, on the electric front. Well, and the hybrid front too. I mean, the F-150 hybrid is quite a popular machine.
We talked to Clint about it. They said the F-150 hybrid, when they were doing all of our best of year stuff, that was the camera car. Like, it didn't win car of the year, but if you listen to Clint, it was basically their car of
it was their lifeline, man.
Yeah, because you could plug camera equipment or batteries or what have you in. It was just as good off-road as the off-roaders that we picked. It was a great all-around vehicle. And yeah, Ford hit it out of the park there. I'm sure Toyota, I would hope, would be a little bit jealous just because they could have done it. Yeah. There was nothing really stopping them.
Yep. I would call that maybe a failure of imagination.
Yeah.
They're seeing what people are buying and not considering, what can we offer that's going to be different. So, and just while I'm thinking about that, we sort of, if I remember correctly, we sort of had that discussion when the new Tundra came out. And we talked about it on the podcast. That was just a few months ago when it came out, and we were talking about it. It's like, yeah, I mean, here's the new Tundra. Is Toyota really doing anything different to really stand out? And if I remember correctly, our conclusion was no.
Yeah.
No, they're not really doing anything different to stand out. They're just kind of following the leader. They're trying to play the game that Ford and Ram and Chevrolet are playing, and trying to play your competitor's game, that's not how you get ahead. You have to make them play your game.
Yep. So let's hit the one that we actually have a couple details about. So this is the Lexus RZ 450E. Not a great name, but it is what it is. But this is riding on the same platform as the Toyota BZ4X and the Subaru Solterra. And so you can see all three of them here in this image. I did a little comparison here. You definitely see, it definitely looks like the Toyota, less so with the Subaru, but let's give credit where credit's due. This is not pure badge engineering. It's clearly the same platform. There are definite similarities, but the roof line seems to be a tad different. The taillights seem to be a tad different. There are some changes. It's not just the third vehicle in this lineup. And yeah, this is coming. Let me double check. I believe this is coming next year. Full debut in 2022. Yeah. We don't know powertrain yet. The fact that it's called the 450E, I speculated in the story that it's probably going to have a boost in power over the Subaru and the Toyota. It would be kind of embarrassing if it didn't, in all honesty, like, because they're obviously going to sell it for more because it's a Lexus. But yeah, This is another vehicle we didn't see the interior of fully. So in Toyota's video for their big battery presentation, they did show Akio Toyoda, the head of the company, driving it, but all of the video was pointing towards him, so you could only see the back seat. So we haven't seen the dashboard, but we do know that there is a drivable version of this vehicle because he drove it.
Right.
So
this is one that is absolutely coming out.
Yeah.
And regular listeners will know I'm often a critic of Lexus design just because I'm not a fan of that big grille. But guess what you don't need on an electric vehicle?
But now it's a big
grill.
piece of metal or plastic. I don't ask me which. So they still have the spindle grill. You can see the outline of it there. It's just the opening is at the very bottom part.
You just get the outline on the sides, which I think is actually a really good look. I kind of dig that look.
Okay.
I like this better than the big spindle grill, but you are correct in that. Okay, now in place of the big spindle grill, you just have a big, like, football field of nothing there, with a Lexus badge in the middle.
Yeah.
And I feel like there could be something. They could do something more there. You could have a little bit of creativity going on there, other than to just have this big empty blob of nothing. But of the three vehicles of the Toyota BZ Stormtrooper, I'm just going to call it Stormtrooper.
Okay, the Toyota Stormtrooper.
The Toyota, that name is just ridiculous. You need to come up with something better than BZ4X. See, I do remember it, but I refuse to acknowledge it. I'm in my own world. Between that and the Solterra, I think the Lexus looks head and shoulders better than the others.
It's the best of the bunch. I think so. You look at it, and I wrote up this story and I looked at it over and over again in the pictures we have. I can't tell if the roof line is different or just blacking out that piece on the D pillar is enough to make it look different.
I think it's probably enough to make it look different, because knowing automakers, if you're going to make a change like that, it's not going to be an inexpensive change to have a slightly different roof. If they keep that same structure throughout the Lexus, throughout the Toyota, throughout the Subaru, it's just a tremendous cost saving. So I would bet a gazillion dollars that it just looks a little different.
Well, because they should have done that on the rest, because it looks great. You can see the charging panel is in exactly the same place on all three. Like there are similarities, but yeah, the Lexus bodywork, it kind of fits it the best of the bunch. All three have the black cladding. I don't know why Toyota thought to put the huge black cladding on the BZ4X that even cuts into the charging port.
It's rugged.
This little bit is enough, and they don't put it on the back. It's just they keep it simple. So yeah, of the three, I wouldn't say any of them are beautiful, but the Lexus is the best of the bunch.
I think it's definitely the best of the bunch. Yeah, the whole cladding thing. In a couple of weeks, folks, you're gonna see an article on Motor1.com, our annual Festivus airing of grievances. And if somebody doesn't write a grievance on the use of just plastic cladding to make your soft roader look more rugged, if somebody else doesn't write it, I'm going to write it, because it's just ridiculous. And I think these two vehicles right here, the Subaru Solterra and the Toyota Stormtrooper THX BZ
1138.
Yeah. Those are good examples, because they're not rugged vehicles. You're not going to go off-road adventuring with them.
No.
And the cladding just makes it look ridiculous. And
Agreed.
And to make that point, the Lexus version looks head and shoulders better. Now, speaking of Lexus, there is one other vehicle from this whole big debut worth talking about. Is there not, Bruce?
So I'm not sure which one you're talking about, because we saw a few different Lexuses.
Well, this was part of this was part of the presentation.
Are you talking hypercar or wagon? Help me out.
I would love to talk both, but let's talk about the hypercar.
Okay.
I can share that. Or you got it there, or I can share.
I've got all the tabs open, dude. Yeah, I got it.
All right, I'll let you share it, because this is basically the LFA successor.
We think,
We
like the
we
rest of them.
we think. Well,
It
and
looks
and
great. It looks like
and
an LC that has a better nose.
well, I mean, I see a lot of LFA. I mean, when you look
There's some
behind the
LFA in there.
when you
Yeah.
look at that at the B pillar, the kind of the scoops that are up high that you had on the original LFA. You see those present here. I love that this is an electric vehicle that still has this incredibly long bonnet.
Would you tell me I'm wrong if I said there was a little 2000 GT in there?
Not in that image that we're looking at right now. I definitely see it with the way the front fenders are flared, with the really the kind of the tall backside that slopes down pretty sharply. That yeah, there's a
There's
little
I'm
2000
not
GT.
saying like it's not a retro modern thing at all, but
Mhm.
I want to say the person that designed this clearly looked at a Toyota 2000 GT and said, there's a little sprinkling of spice from there I could
Mhm.
take and use that.
Now, as with many of the other concepts here, this is different from the other concepts in that this particular one is going to production. It may not look exactly like this,
Right.
but it is going to production. Lexus has offered up some details about it. There isn't a name specifically yet.
Nope.
We've just been calling it the LFA spiritual successor because, I mean, look at it. It kind of, it certainly draws, I think, on LFA. But Lexus is claiming that this is going to go from 0 to 62 miles an hour, 100 kilometers an hour in the low 2-second range. That's fast.
That's totally, I mean, but
that's
look at
definitely hypercar fast.
I mean, that's Tesla Model S Plaid range, more or less.
Yep.
That's believable.
Yep. Oh no, it's
You can do that
totally
with an EV, sure.
it's totally believable. They're advertising it with a range of over 435 miles, but it's just a number that they're putting out. There's no testing anything going on to back that up. So while there's a lot we don't know about it,
real quick, while we're looking at this image, I'm going to zoom in. I love. Oh, damn it! Hold on. Let me get it right.
While you're looking that up,
I love this little flying buttress here at the back.
Yeah,
that is so good. The way the bodywork curves over the back here, and there's a little inlet.
That's where I really get the LFA vibe.
That's good stuff
in that little design. And while there's a lot we don't know about it, considering the 15 vehicles that Toyota and Lexus, I mean, Lexus is part of it too, obviously being part of Toyota, with the 15 vehicles that were just kind of dropped upon the world, getting a range and a 0 to 60 time is it's way more than we got on everything else there.
Exactly.
So if there's one vehicle I would say that I really wanted to know more about, it would be that one. And hey, we learned a little bit more about it. So hopefully we see something very similar to that in production. And if the performance stacks up, I'd be happy with Toyota calling that an LFA again.
Yeah, that'd be a good name for it. It's a very attractive vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
It's got that long deck here. Let me go back to that picture and profile so we can all see it. If you're watching on YouTube, it's got that long deck, short rear look that, sports cars are kind of classically had. You think, Jaguar E-Type, you think kind of the classic Grand Tours. And granted, there's no engine under there. So, you could make an argument that it doesn't necessarily need to be there, but it just looks good. It's got it's just like a teardrop kind of, and to the eye, it's very, very attractive. So all good things.
Yeah. Anything else you wanted to talk about here on the big Toyota bomb?
I mean, I think a second. Let's just hit the two wagons and the convertible they showed before we call it here. Hold on one second.
Because they were just kind of, I mean, I don't think anything ever focused in on them, but we picked up on them.
Yeah.
Just because, I mean, we're journalists and we're supposed to pick up on wagons, right? But
right. Well, so this is, again, Lexus. We know literally nothing about these vehicles. Why you would have two wagons that look very similar. Like, essentially, the only difference is what the C-pillar looks like, whether you want a tiny crease or a big crease. And then the convertible, the kind of the Grand Tour. But they showed them off. Are they actually going to build all 3 of these? I kind of doubt it.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
you'll get
doubt
one
it.
wagon. Maybe you'll get no wagons. But
I mean, this looks like the filler to just make it look more impressive than it is, probably.
yeah, this feels like auto journalist catnip that like, oh, there's a wagon. We better write about it. And hey,
Guess
well,
what?
we took the
Guess
catnip
what?
and we wrote about it. So fine.
We did. And parking the little 2+2 convertible next to it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was definitely done on purpose. We know nothing about them.
Nope.
They may not be anything
I don't
more
even
than
think
just
they're gonna happen.
yeah.
But hey, they were there. Those were among the concepts. So Toyota,
Bravo.
you got us.
Bravo to Toyota. You certainly have us. And when I say us, I'm sure I'm talking about all the listeners out there. A lot of people asking a lot of questions, a lot of mystery, and that can be a good thing here. But it could quickly become a bad thing, Toyota, if you don't follow it up with action.
So that's the thing. I think General Motors and Ford has learned that you need to under promise and over deliver with your vehicles. And I worry Toyota hasn't got that message. I worry that they way over promised and we are going to get a bunch of boxy, ugly EVs that aren't inspiring at all.
Yeah, that could very well be the case. So Toyota, hopefully you prove us wrong.
Yeah, prove me wrong.
Well, speaking of proving wrong, I don't have a good segue for that one.
Okay.
Except to say that, you know what? We're sometimes proven wrong. So if you think we said something wrong, you can email us, podcast@motor1.com. You can always comment on our YouTube videos that go up every Friday. You can always comment on our articles at motor1.com that go up every Friday. That give you a synopsis of the whole podcast that's to come. We love to hear from you. We always try to read comments when we get them. And we do have a couple that we can go over this week, Bruce. Did you catch... If you didn't catch the YouTube, yeah, we have some good comments on the Cobra. Actually, I'd like to read that one right now, if that's all right.
Can I hit one thing real quick, and then you can go ahead and do that?
Yes, you can.
I just wanted to tell people real quick. So we will continue to have podcasts out during the holidays. So obviously you're listening to this on Friday, but next Friday is Christmas Eve.
Yes.
We've already recorded a short episode for that. It's not our normal length, but hey, if your family's annoying you and you need to get away, or you just like us and you want to show us to your family,
yes, put us on.
There will be an episode out next Friday, and then there will also be an episode out the following Friday, which is New Year's Eve.
Let us entertain you on Christmas Eve and on New Year's Eve. We will have some entertaining content, doing what we do best, rambling. And there's always going to be some sort of, I think, a cheap car challenge in there somewhere.
Next week we will have a cheap car challenge, and then
we have
the
one
following
next
week we'll have a year-end roundup for the previous year, and then the week after that, which will be the first week of the year and will be the show's 1-year anniversary, we will have a roundup of what's coming in 2022. So we have that stuff planned out already. So yeah, sorry to interrupt, Smith, but go ahead.
No,
I just wanted to promote our upcoming shows.
That's no interruption. It's always good to promote the upcoming shows, just because usually we're planning our shows like an hour or two before we record them.
It's happened.
We really do ramble.
Yep.
But let me read some comments here, because last week's episode where we talked about the electric Cobra versus the gas Cobra, I thoroughly enjoyed that episode. Hopefully others did out there as well. A commenter on YouTube, Glenn Miz, says, I've been fortunate enough to have driven a few Cobra replicas. I'm already insanely jealous. Super performance and backdraft versions specifically. Great fun cars to drive, and the sounds of the engines will make you forget any troubles you had earlier in the day. I haven't driven them, but I've certainly heard more than a few, and you're absolutely right there. But I live in a fairly dense neighborhood. I'd love to see a hybrid where I could get this out of my garage on a weekend morning without waking up and upsetting every neighbor I have, then being able to fire up a Coyote V8 for those coast cruises and canyon carving days. Love the alliteration there, Glenn. If you're not a writer, you should be. Thanks very much for dropping that comment. I'm very happy to hear from people that aren't immediately put off by the thought of an electrified Cobra.
Same.
Because my initial thought was, anybody that hears this that's remotely in love with these cars, they're just gonna flip their mind over how dare you electrify my wonderful V8 Cobra. So very, very glad that you took some time to comment. I really appreciate that. Agree with you there. Although if I have a gas Cobra, I think I want to make sure my neighbors know I have it too. I gotta be honest. Maybe I'm a little harsh like that, but you know what? Hey, 9 a.m. Saturday morning. It's time to get up, everybody. Let's go for a drive. Blah, 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 blah.
So, Smith, will you do me a favor real quick? So,
Sure.
Josiah is a frequent commenter for us. We haven't read his comments in several weeks. I did read his comment on YouTube. I know we slightly disappointed him last week. Would you read Josiah's comment from the YouTube real quick? I don't have it up, and then I will take one for the next one.
Sure, I can. So Josiah said, awesome episode, and I appreciate y'all doing my segments. It almost feels like you picked the most disappointing ones, though. To reiterate, last week we talked about modern kind of retro versions of classic cars. Which ones we liked most? Which ones maybe did it right? Which ones we did it wrong? Admittedly, we kind of focused on the negative. We kind of focused on the ones that we didn't like, but we did talk about a couple that we did like. Sure. Josiah says, there are also a lot of successful ones, as Clint pointed out. I know we always talk about the Bronco, but both the modern and retro are terrific, and the Wrangler is similar. I would have also considered the Land Rover Defender. Didn't even think about the Defender. Acura NSX, Nissan Z, Civic Type R, and Mercedes SL. I was pleasantly surprised that you didn't pick the Integra. That would have been too much for me to handle. Keep rambling, guys. You know, Josiah, we're always going to ramble. I didn't want to pick the Integra because I felt like we've been talking about it a lot, and it was just an easy target.
Yeah.
It's same with the Civic. The Nissan Z, I think the new Z looks fantastic.
I think
dubious
about the powertrain, but I think the design is fantastic.
I think the new design is fantastic. I still think I'd rather have the original, though.
Same.
That's not saying that the new one is bad. I just think, to my eyes, the original 240 is just a little bit more appealing than the new Z. I thought about talking about the NSX as well, but I didn't feel like the original NSX was modern enough.
It's more a revival of the name.
Yeah.
And the same thing with the SL. That's the thing. The Defender kind of goes retro modern, but I don't think it does it very well. So Josiah, just to answer you directly, I kind of took your question to mean the designs of old that were interpreted into new looks. So your Minis, your Beetles, your Camaros, stuff like that, rather than reviving an old nameplate onto a new car like NSX, SL, stuff like that.
But I mean, there's still going to be some retro cues that are plugged in there.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess, you know, maybe it's a little bit of a gray area. Maybe that's foundation for a new topic for a future podcast.
Totally.
What defines a retro style? Is there an age limit?
I don't think there's an age limit. No, I think it's just like the styling cues to me.
Yeah, but if you have a car that's 10 years old, okay, let's say, for example, the 2024 Dodge Challenger. If a next generation comes out in 2024, the prior generation has already been around. I mean, it's almost old enough to drive itself. It's almost old enough to get a driver's license. So
that's true.
I mean, if they incorporate styling cues from that, can you call the next generation retro when it's just picking up cues from the prior generation?
That's a really good point.
You know, it's maybe it's worth a little bit of scrutiny. So Josiah, damn it, you're making us think on a Wednesday night as we record this here. So thanks much for the comments, and keep on commenting, keep on rambling. What else? What do you got, Bruce?
So I want to hit up this question. Last one. This is from our buddy Rui, and he is in Europe specifically, and his question is a very European specific question. So I would like to ask a two-part question. But for some context, here in Europe, model year reference is only starting to really be used. Historically, we would use generation codes, W123, W204 for Mercedes, 996, 991 for Porsche, etc. And even for lesser brands, that would happen, like Renault Clio 1, Megane 2. My question is, with the exception of the Corvette in the US, it doesn't seem that generations matter, but model years. Why? And second part, in its origin, was it marketing or regulation that created this? So yeah, Rui, Smith and I actually discussed this a little bit yesterday, just in our chat, and it comes down, and we kind of both agreed on this, and I'll start, and Smith, you can elaborate on it, is that in especially the 50s and 60s, less so later, but in kind of that heyday of the American car, there would be styling changes every single year.
Right.
That, so Corvette was introduced in 53. The second gen, the C2 was introduced in 62. So if you compare a 53 Corvette and a 61 Corvette, you go from one headlight to two headlights. You go from inline six to V8. You just have massive styling, massive powertrain changes, all in that one generation. And that's true with a lot of other products as well. You think of kind of the Tri-5 Chevy, the 55, 56, 57 Chevy.
Yeah,
well,
those each look.
Yeah, each one of
just those three. Yeah,
have a slightly different look. And that's kind of why is that model year mattered, because styling changed slightly year after year after year. And so, yeah, Smith, elaborate.
Well, and it may not even be slightly. I mean, a good example that I like to think of is the Cadillacs from the late 50s into the early 60s.
That's a good one.
A 58 Cadillac has almost a completely different look from the 59. The 59 has a very distinctive different look from the 60, notably with the design of the rear fins. The front grille was a little different. The face was a little different. And then in 61, it was different still. The fins were a little bit smaller. The grille was a little bit different. The front was a little less flamboyant. I mean, that's year to year to year. I mean, that's 58, 59, 60, 61. That's 4 straight years of something that looks noticeably different. And I think that's why model year is referred to really here in the US more than generation. Technically, the Ford Mustang.
I was just about to do that. Yeah,
go for it. The first generation Ford Mustang is considered first generation from 1965.
64 and a half. Let's do 64 and a half.
64 and a half, technically, all the way to 1973.
Yep.
Now think about how different a 1973 Mustang looks from a 1965. I mean, you would say it's a completely different car. And I know a lot of Mustang people, even though it's first generation, I mean, they consider it different. They kind of break it up into like 65 to 67, and then 68 to 70, and then 71 to 73. There's so many differences that happen from year to year. I think that's why we go by year in the United States.
And I'm just thinking about Mustang is just a fantastic example. You think of first year of the Fox body 79, right?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, you look at a 79 Mustang, you compare that to a 93, and it's apples and oranges. They don't look like anything alike.
Well, I mean, they have the same kind of that same wedge design, but that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
But I will say this, as we've moved forward through the 20th into the 21st century, we do see where year to year changes don't really happen like they used to.
No.
So when you think about it in a modern context, you almost could refer to a vehicle these days by its generation, even in the United States. Although you'll still get, some minor changes, but nothing like it used to be back through the 40s and the 50s and into the 60s.
Yeah. The 70s is where that kind of ends, more or less. I obviously know I just referenced the Fox body Mustang, but that's more of an outlier than a good example. But
yep.
like you said, 40s, 50s, 60s, where you had styling changes every single year. And I had a grandfather who could just like nail them. Like he knew like,
Yep.
oh, no, that's a 52, not a 53, or whatever, because the styling changes were there, and if you knew what they were, you could see them, but you had to know. And so I think that's what it is. So
a 1975 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am and 76, I believe, are pretty close, but then 77 is different. 78's a little different, just a little different. 79 is noticeably different. 80 is pretty similar, and I mean those are all the same generation. Yeah. So I mean even up to that point, you're still seeing changes pretty often. Thanks much for sending that question into us. What a great question.
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. It's just it's a difference between the American versus European car market. It's not one is better than the other. In fact, our former-ish boss John Neff, he contemplated doing an op-ed for ages about the Tesla Model S and the Dodge Challenger specifically, and the fact that those cars had the same exterior design for ages, but they had powertrain changes, they had tech changes. The fact that FCA, Stellantis on one hand and Tesla on the other, that they never invested in styling changes, but they could invest, that freed up the capital to invest in other changes, made them better vehicles. He talked about that for years, something like that. It never got made, but he mumbled about that for a while. It's a valid argument.
I'd read it. I'd read it for sure. So if you have any questions that are burning, just burning up your brain, email us podcast@motor1.com. We always like to try to read the emails. We always like to try to read the comments. Speaking of Dodge Challenger, I'm going to try. We'll make that segue later. Speaking of Tesla Model S,
where are you going with this?
Let's talk about some new electric news that just came out today that might be interesting to people.
Are we talking about Ken Block electric news or GM electric news?
Yes.
Okay.
Which one you want?
The one that interests me more. We're going to talk about Ken Block first.
You want to talk about Ken Block? I can talk about Ken Block. Here, I can even bring this up here for us. Okay. So today, of course, if you're listening, you probably know Ken Block, the Gymkhana rally driver who drives the big noisy Hoonitron Mustang with 1,400 horsepower and all-wheel drive. Well, he's now gone to Audi, and that happened a little while ago. And today they revealed his new Hoonitron car. It's not Hoonitron, it's called the Hoonitron.
And it looks damn good.
it looks really good.
We were talking Audis, was it last week or 2 weeks ago? Was it last? Anyway, this is perfect. This is a perfect encapsulation of retro and modern in one vehicle. I think love it.
I think so. Obviously,
Audi clearly put a ton of money into this thing, and I can't wait to see it on the road.
I can't wait to see it on the road. I can't wait to see it driven. Technically, this is called the Audi S1 e-tron Quattro Hoonitron. It's quite a name, so you can just call it the Audi S1 Hoonitron, or you can just call it the Hoonitron. We're probably just going to call it the Hoonitron.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is based on the Audi Sport Quattro S1, the Pikes Peak version back from the 80s.
Yeah.
In terms of looks.
Yeah.
But this isn't a modified version of that car. This is entirely new from the ground up. But when you look at the styling, the way the rear wing is just incorporated into the body, the way it's got the flared fenders both at the front and the rear, I mean that's all just classic S1. But this is an electric vehicle. It's all-wheel drive. We don't have any stats yet on power, but considering that Block's previous Gymkhana car was a 1,400 horsepower Mustang, this is probably going to have at least that much, if not more. I hope so, at least.
Yeah.
We don't know when it's going to debut, but it is going to be the car that he drives in the next iteration of Gymkhana called Electricana. So obviously, because of the electric nature of the car, and from what I gather, he's already driven this. He's already taken this for a few test drives. So this isn't just this isn't just a rendering in a computer. This is a real car it's done. It's out there ready to go. Looking at it next to the S1. We talked. When were we talking about the S1? And I was criticizing it for being kind of awkward.
2 weeks ago.
I mean, it does look kind of awkward. Come on, it's got that really short wheelbase. I know it's supposed to have the short wheelbase. The new S1 e-tron, I think this looks fantastic. It's a little bit longer. It's a little bit lower. And this was what was really impressive to me. Audi designed and built that car in 4 weeks.
Wow.
4 weeks. It's usually a process that takes a year. According to the video that we have in the article, the Audi designers, they were just stoked and excited to get on this project. So they had a bunch of different designs to choose from. They chose this one. They put it all together. I think as we go forward, we're going to find that the powertrain is probably tied to the e-tron Dakar rally car, or the rally vehicle that they're doing. I suspect there's going to be some similarity there. But
which, to be clear, for anyone who doesn't know, that is, I'm doing this off the top of my head. So if I'm wrong, folks, you can email me. But off the top of my head, I believe that is a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder that is acting purely as a generator for the electric motors and batteries and whatnot. So it's not powering the car. It exists purely as a generator.
Right. And whether or not this has something similar, don't know. I mean, it certainly has gaping intakes back there on the side.
It just looks fantastic. And honestly, kind of bravo to Audi, because this was not a cheap build. You can tell just by looking at it. They threw money at this. And, this is not a motorsport vehicle that you're going to see on the track. This is obviously not a production vehicle. They just kind of did this for promotional reasons, and they're hoping the next Gymkhana video does stupid numbers on YouTube like the previous ones have. And so, yeah,
I mean, that's another point to raise, because Block's previous cars have all been based on some form of production vehicle.
Yeah.
Even the Hoonitron, I mean, yeah, that's a custom built vehicle, but it's still based on the Mustang. It's still not done by an automaker using whatever proprietary system. It's basically a race car, a custom built race car underneath that you can get parts for. This is a legit concept car. This is an Audi concept car designed, built by Audi for him to drive. And it's the only one of its kind. Wouldn't it be cool though, if this ended up having some sort of production version?
Yeah.
In the future,
and I will never be able to afford it. That's going to be
retro,
$1 million+ vehicle, but yeah,
a retro S1 e-tron production. Yeah. Wow, that would be cool. So yeah, this is news that just popped up today that seemed pretty interesting. I mean, anytime full disclosure, I'm a big Block fan. I've met him a couple times. He's a cool guy. He definitely knows a thing or two about.
Oh, have you met him? I didn't realize that.
He got into stage rally at an age where most people are retiring, and he was competitive at that age. And I think it's just phenomenal. Yeah. He's a cool guy. Cool. Just a big car fan. And yeah, I'm stoked to see where it goes from here.
Yeah. It's a very cool project. I can't wait to see the video. I mean, all of his videos have been fantastic, whether, the early days where he was with Subaru, or kind of famously he was with Ford for ages. I guess the sole bummer of this is that we're never going to see the Hoonifox, which is that rendering and stuff you put out of the Fox body Mustang.
The Fox body Mustang. That would have been
it would have been cool, but this is really cool too. This is great, and the video is going to be awesome. I know it is.
So, can't wait to see it. So more electric news.
Other EV news.
News. This is an electric episode.
Yep, except for the very, very last thing we're going to talk about. So we got our first look at the GMC Denali EV front end. You can see it here if you're looking. We knew this was a vehicle that was coming because we knew GM said that both the Chevy Silverado and the GMC Sierra would get EV versions.
Mhm.
Obviously, here we have the GMC, but this is the first time we're seeing any look at it. This is, for all intents and purposes, the debut of the actual vehicle. And it looks really cool. It's got kind of a cyberpunk Tron type thing going on with like the individual LEDs. It's a good looking front end for what we can see. Like
I never thought Tron until you just said it, but now I see it just like in plain sight. When I say Tron, I'm not talking about Audi, as we were just talking about e-tron.
Oh, I didn't even think of that, dude.
I'm talking about the classic movie Tron
With Jeff
from the
Bridges.
early 80s, and then of course they did the sequel.
Yep.
That was all right. It kind of got trashed, but it was all right.
Yeah. The de-aging in that is bad. It's very, very early in Disney trying out their de-aging tech, and the de-aged Jeff Bridges is bad. But the movie's fine. The movie's kind of good.
No, the movie's good. I see some Tron in this. Yeah, I mean, I hate to say there's not much else to talk about. I mean, we just have this teaser of the front clip, but
at
I mean,
least we've seen it. Like,
yeah.
You know, we knew the Silverado was coming. We've kind of seen some Silverado stuff. This is the first time we're seeing that look applied to GMC. You know, in general, GMC, it's going to have more features. Maybe it's going to have more luxury, something along those lines. It's going to have a higher price, and it's going to have something to justify that higher price.
Right.
And otherwise, we don't know anything.
Yeah. I mean, that grill looks kind of neat. I've enjoyed the GMC styling on recent trucks more than I've enjoyed the Chevrolet styling. So,
yeah,
for me at least, it's going to have that going for it. But yeah, coming soon, shock and awe, GMC Sierra EV.
And then we'll end the show with something that's not an electric vehicle. And I'm going to have to lean on you because this came out while I was eating dinner, and you wrote this up. And that is the new Shelby Ford Mustang Shelby GT500 KR.
As we're recording, this news actually just dropped like an hour and a half ago. And I'm guessing it's going to be some pretty big news because the Shelby GT500 KR, it's one of those vehicles in not just necessarily the Mustang camp, but in all of the muscle car camp that kind of has this aura around it. They've only done it 3 times. The original obviously was back in the late 60s, and then they brought back the KR name in the late 2000s, 2008, 2009, and now the KR is back again for 2022. This isn't coming through Ford with upfits from Shelby. I mean, Shelby is actually doing the work on this one, and I'll just come right out and say it. It's got 900 freaking horsepower. That's not insignificant. There is no hybrid here. There's no electricity. They just give it a massive supercharger. They do some other upgrades to the engine that you would need when you add air. They've got the throttle body, the upgraded intercooler, some other things there. And then they put some carbon fiber bits on the outside, obviously. You've got a carbon fiber front splitter, a rear diffuser, gurney flaps. Of course, you have to have the GT500 KR stripe on the rocker panels. It gets 20-inch Shelby wheels. It has its own carbon fiber hood. But here's the thing. They're going to do this for 2022. And that's also marks the 60th anniversary of the founding of Shelby, the company, in 1962. So it's partly in celebration for that. But it's not going to be just a 2022 model. If you know it on the article, the headline just says Ford Mustang Shelby GT500 KR returns. That's because Shelby's going to build 225 GT500 KRs for 2022. Those will be 60th anniversary models. But if you happen to be an owner of a 2020 or 2021 Shelby GT500, you can contact Shelby and they can do an upfit on your car to make it a KR, but you better act quick because if my memory serves me correct, they're only going to do 60 of those. So it's going to be an extremely rare car, but it's not going to be limited to just 2020. It's sort of an odd thing, but yeah, Shelby GT500 KR, 900 horsepower. It should be good on the track. It should be good, obviously, quarter mile. Shelby only had a few photos as of this time. Don't know if we're going to get more. But I mean, the hood, I mean, that's just a super aggressive hood. Of course, it's got the hood pins in there. The over-the-top stripe is an option with Shelby. That's probably something else we should talk about, because it is a little expensive. The Shelby, the Shelby lists for $127,895. That's the starting price if you want one of the 225 KRs for 2022.
Yeah,
and we say that's the starting price because that includes just a base model GT500 that starts at like 72, 73 grand. So
yeah, 72.9, I think we looked it up right before the show.
So
and that's before destination. So 73 something something.
So if you want a Shelby 2022 Shelby GT500 KR and you don't want it to just be the basic Shelby, I mean, the price is going to go up. If you have the 2020 or 2021 model that you just want the upfit, just the upfit is $54,995. So, I mean, it's not going to be cheap. But if you have a GT500, you're already used to spending some money. And the KR, I mean, the KR is royalty really in the Mustang world, with only 225 being built for 2022 and with only 60 upfits being available. I suspect each one will go very quickly. Of course, the first GT500 KR is going to be auctioned at Bear Jackson. They seem to always do that. Goes into production the beginning of, I think, around February or March 2022. So I mean, this isn't that far away.
Nope.
And yeah, the last gasp of a crazy powerful Mustang, maybe. I don't know.
Probably.
It looks great. I love that hood. I just love that kind of power dome hood with just the aggressive venting in there. Of course, Shelby says all the venting is functional. And yeah, man, this is fresh news just as of an hour and a half ago as we're recording, so it'll be a couple days old by the time you hear it. But
and you can test my Mustang knowledge. I'm 99% sure this is right. KR stands for King of the Road.
King of the Road. The rumor has it that Ford and Shelby got wind that General Motors or Chevrolet might want to come out with a King of the Road Corvette back in the 60s.
Oh, I've not heard that.
And Shelby thought that, hey, that's a really cool name. Looked it up really quick. No trademarks were made on it. So they really quick jumped on it and trademarked the name.
Very cool.
So I've heard. Of course, then Corvette, they had the King of the Hill Corvette. So it all works out in the end. Everybody's got to get their little slice of the muscle car pie, right?
Of course. Here comes the Judge. Well, the Rambler. Oh, what was not the Boss? What was the Rambler? Oh, I can't think of it.
The Performance AMC Rambler.
Yeah, it had the Rebel. That's what it was.
Yeah, Rambler Rebel. There we go.
The Rebel. Yeah.
Yeah.
They all did it back in the day.
Oh yeah. Well, hey, they're still doing it today too, right? You've got the Challenger Demon.
I'm kind of sure Judge hasn't come back.
Well, it's a Pontiac thing. We need to have Pontiac back.
Yeah, but obviously General Motors owns it. They could do it, but I don't know.
Well, what do you think? What do you think about the Shelby GT500 KR? Are you going to pay 130 grand for a 900 horsepower Mustang? Email us podcast@motor1.com. Comment on the article at motor1.com. Comment on our YouTube video at Motor1 Podcast on YouTube. Go there, like and subscribe. We're doing our subscriber challenge.
We're not going to make it, dude.
where we want 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. We haven't. We're not even close. But I still have faith. Come on, there's still a couple weeks to go here. Christmas miracles do happen.
That's true.
So make this video go viral. We want 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year. And if we do that, Bruce and I will do whatever you tell us to do.
That's right.
On camera. Where else are you going to hear that? Probably a lot of places, but
yeah,
we're special.
But yeah, so I'm just going to repeat what I said already. So you're watching it. You have an episode this week. You will have an episode on Christmas Eve. You will have an episode on New Year's Eve. So if you are a Rambling About Cars fan, you've got us. Like I said earlier, if you hate your family on Christmas Eve and you need something else to listen to, you can listen to our annoying voices. If you don't have any friends on New Year's Eve and you're all alone and you want to celebrate New Year's with us, we'll be there for you. But yeah, so we're going to be here. Yeah, that's kind of it. As always, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. We always appreciate all of our listeners. I gotta be honest, just with holidays and stuff like that, I've fallen down. I used to comment on every comment we got. I apologize. Things have been hectic. Things
It's
happen.
busy times.
It
I
is what it
apologize
is.
as well.
I will get better. I will do better. And I will
keep
comment back to
commenting
all of you. Yes,
because we are definitely reading them, even if we aren't commenting.
As you can
all the
see
time.
with Josiah and Rui and stuff like that, we totally read them. It's just, I hope you understand sometimes time gets in the way. But we appreciate you all and we thank you for listening. And as always, just thank you for listening to the show. So with that, bye-bye.
See ya.